All right, so this is going to be the second half of 2.2, difference of quotients. I think the first part of difference of quotients is kind of neat because all we're really doing is substituting something in. But obviously, once you get a substitute in, it's the whole simplifying part. It gets where we get confused and we probably don't like it. So difference of quotients is just a ratio called difference quotient, and then it's also called average rate of change, something like we used to talk about when we say slopes. So for right now, to understand difference of quotients, though, what I want you to do only is just first focus on part one as far as the steps. Every time you see an x, I want you to replace that x. So we see it here, 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 all with just in parentheses x plus h. So Joelle, you're next on my list. I would like for you to do the first one and the last one. Well, don't do the last one because that takes too long. Um, let's just do. I want you to do the first one and the third one. Okay, so for practice, what we're going to do is practice is for x plus h. I mean, we have here all every time you see an x. So I guess I'll do the first one for you, and I want you to kind of walk me through these two once we get done. So for this first one here, notice that how many x's we see? One, right? So for this one here, because I see one, I'm going to just replace it with x plus h. So anytime you see an x, replace it with in parentheses x plus h. For this first part, if you understand this first part, you can set this problem up every single time. Then we have to work on the algebra part later on. So again, for the first part, we see 1x, so I'm going to replace with x plus h. That's it. I'm not going to distribute the 8 in yet. I just want everybody to focus on just understanding when I see an x, I'm going to replace it with in parentheses x plus h. So how many x? 1. So I'm going to replace this x again with this x plus h. Here I see it 2 times. And yes, I do have a negative. So that's why, again, use the parentheses like we have noticed up here. Negative x plus h squared minus x plus h plus 7. The last one here, we see it on 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. So every one of those gets an x plus h in parentheses. Can I get a thumbs up from everybody that understands just the first part of difference equation? All we're doing is replacing. Good. So once again, this is part one because there's 3 parts to this. 1, 2, and then 3. So for the first part, we're doing just what we did here, just replacing the x with the x plus h, and then later on we'll simplify. We'll distribute the 8 in, we'll distribute the 2 in, and so forth. So we all got the first part, which is the hardest one. So we good, then the next part should be easy. So the next part for this one is once you get this one in, we're going to say minus, and then we're going to write f of x. Whatever the fx is, so these is considered to be the fx. That's the function I give you. You just rewrite it. So for this particular one here, for the first part, we're going to have x, 8, in parentheses, x plus h, minus 8x. And it's going to be all over h. So the third part, you just always write h. So I gave you the function. Please pen work. Oh, this pen is not working with me. So this is what I have for here. 8x, I'm going to, for the first part, so I have a box here minus a box here. And once again, people, I'm sorry about this internet, but they don't catch up to my internet speed. So that's why you don't see it lagging like this. And on the bottom is my h. So remember the first part here is my of x plus h. So this is where we do that first part, just substituting it in. So 8 so that's just that first part. The next part here is just f of x. So we rewrite this whole part and just put it into here. And then it's always over h. So that's all it means, part 1, part 2, part 3. And then later on, is where we take and simplify. So we distribute this inside. We have 8x plus 8h here minus 8x. And it's going to be all over this h. Notice for this one here, I have been for combining like terms, the only thing that's light is this 8x and this minus 8x over here. So guess what happens to those? They cancel out. So what are we left with is just 8h over h. And then because I have two h's on top and bottom, those cancel out. So the answer for difference of quotient is just going to be 8 for this problem here of 8x. All right, so let's give this a try. So this is my function 2x of minus 3, and I want you to plug it into the difference of quotient formula and see what our answer is simplified. So for this example here, I have 2x minus 3. The first part, I'm going to replace this x here with x plus h, which is over here. So that's what I did here. So 2x plus h minus 3 and place it in my first box of blue here. Minus the f of x. So whatever the function they give you in the original problem, but the same, just rewrite it. 2x minus 3 all over again. And then you put it all over h. Down here, it's always going to be just h. So then we come over here and we do our math and distribute. So this 2 times this x gives us 2x. This 2 times this h gives us 2h. Remember, we have a negative in front, so we have to take this negative and distribute to both parts. So this is where we have minus 2x gets minus 2x here. And then we have minus a minus 3, which gives us a positive 3. Now we can cancel out this 2x with this minus 2x. So we cancel these out in blue. And then we have a minus 3 and a minus plus 3. Those cancel out. So the only thing we left over is 2h over h. And we cross these out because those are would cancel each other out. And the answer for this particular one would just be 2. So here's the answer for this one would be 2. So our next example, I'm kind of have to go do it step by step because it has the word that we just don't like in math, which is a fraction. And because we have a fraction, we go running out the door or throwing a book across the room because we see a fraction. So I'm actually going to work this one out and not going to call in anybody. But again, we see our parts that we have. Part number 1, part number 2, and then h obviously be part number 3, which is the easiest one. I took this f of h and got rid of it because guess what? How many x's do I see? I see 1x. So that's why I'm going to replace this with 1 over x plus h. So I took this x again, got rid of it, and made it x plus h. Now, I did not put it in parentheses, but obviously it will probably be helpful if you just go ahead and put all those every time in parentheses. So that's just part 1. Part 2, remember, is all you have to do is get rid of this f of x. You kind of want to erase it and just rewrite it again. The whatever problem they have, just rewrite it. And again, there's nothing you have to do for h, just leave it on top. So that's just the first part of just setting it up. Replacing all the x's you see with x plus h in parentheses, rewriting the second part, and just remember if you have some parentheses, take this negative and distribute. Now, the next part of this one, what makes it so difficult is we're having to subtract two fractions together. And what is the golden rule for adding, subtracting fraction? What has to be the same? The denominator, right? The denominator has to be the same for it here. They're not the same, so we have to go back to our math skills that we used to do in high school or whenever we decided to learn it and learn how do we get this denominator to match this denominator so we can subtract the numerators together. So I know if I make this kind of a problem on the test, every single one, y'all probably not take me to get again, won't have any kind of good reviews at the end of the homework. So I'm not going to give you all fractions, but I do have to make sure you understand how to do that. So how do you find the LCD? LCD means least common denominator. So over here I have an x plus h, over here I have an x. So in order to get them to be the same, wouldn't it make sense if I multiply this one over here by x plus h and then multiply this side of here by x? And that way both of them will match up. But what you do to the bottom, you also got to do to the top. So the LCD is going to be the x plus h for this side and then the x for this side. So here I'm going to multiply this side by the x, and over here I'm going to multiply this side by x plus h. Again, we do it on top and bottom because this part in red is equal to 1. If I multiply anything by 1, notice I'm not changing the problem any. I'm just manipulating the problem in order for us to subtract fractions together. So once I multiply these two together, you can kind of leave it separated if you want to. So just kind of leave the parentheses here, so down here, and then the top part will be x. So that's why we get x up here. So this x times this 1 gives us the x. This x times the x plus h in parentheses, we just leave them kind of separated like so. We don't have to distribute it in as of yet. Minus, again, the bottom one stays the same, and then I take this 1 and distribute. 1 times this 1 gives us the x, 1 times the h gives us the h. So now look at the denominators for both of them. Don't they look the same? Thumbs up. They look the same. So now we can actually take it and subtract the numerators together. This x, remember we have to distribute this negative to this one and this one here. So this x minus h will be on the top part. So I'll put this in parentheses. I take it and subtract it, and this is where I get for the top part. So here, this is me distributing. So this minus gets distributed here and gets minus x here. This minus here gets distributed with this h and get up top. So that's here. And when you combine like terms on the bottom, remember the denominator stays the same. So if you do one, 1/2 plus 3 over 2, the denominator still stays 2 when you add those together when they're the same. So we keep those both the same. So we got rid of the parentheses, distribute the x in, we got here. So guess what happens with these two x's here? They can just cancel out. And that leaves me with just a negative on top. So here comes the confusion part when we get to the next step on how did they come up with the next solution to this one. Well, if you remember how to divide fraction, actually we have a fraction here divided by another fraction. If you put this over 1, it will actually be a fraction. What we used to learn in here, we do the reciprocal, or we do the whole keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip when we do fractions together. So let me kind of lay that out for you so you can kind of see what's going on. So here we have here, this can be written as two fractions. So negative h over x divided by, so if you actually use it as symbol, this, and we can actually say this is actually over 1. So this is going to be h over 1. Remember, if you have, anytime you have a number or a variable, you put it over 1, that changes into a fraction. So this part here divided by the h over 1. So what we do is keep, so we keep this one exactly the same. This part here gets changed to multiplication. And then we flip this to do the reciprocal, which is going to be 1 over. So for the next part, we can actually take this part and notice that we have an h over here and we have an h over here, and we can take rid of that and just cancel both of them out, leaving with just that negative on top. So if I multiply straight across, this negative times this 1 gives us a negative 1. And then this, remember, goes away with this one. So on the bottom, it's just left with x plus h. So this is the whole keep, change, and then I flipped it. So these two can cancel out. This example actually kind of multiplied it together before they canceled. So they just went ahead and just took this and multiplied, made it one fraction. And then what they did was they flipped this part here. You took the negative, put it onto the 1, and then made this positive, which is legal. So they just rewritten it as, instead of negative h plus 1, they made it negative 1 plus h. If you did the math and multiply these two together, I guarantee you still have negative h. Same thing up here. If you multiply these two together and the math is switched, the answer is still negative h. So these h's cancel out, leaving them with just negative 1 over x plus h on the bottom. So you can write the answer like this, or you can put the negative out in front and just make this one a positive. Both of them are exactly the same thing as far as the answer is concerned. So the last problem here I'm going to actually do for you to kind of let you know, just to kind of recap again what we learned. How many x's did we see? 1, 2. So I'm going to replace the x plus h for the first part. Then I'm going to take it again and replace it for the second part. So I'll replace it here and here. That's why I did it in red. Then we take this part here, we square it, and we get all this here. So you have to do your FOIL. And then we distribute the 2 inside to each to get each part here. Take this negative, distribute to this one, and distribute to that one till we get this part here. Then we combine like terms at the end. Before we combine like terms, this is just, again, the first part of this problem here. Then we have to rewrite f of x, which is all this again in the second part. And for this part. So this is part 1. This over here is part 2. I take the negative and distribute inside, collect all like terms, and then down here we get to this last part of the answer, if x, 4x minus 2h minus 1. This actually will conclude section 2.2. If you have any concerns, the remaining part of class, we can go over any questions that you might have for this section.